So now we get to multiculturalism and immigration. So you mentioned multiculturalism, but yeah, both Canada and the United States are, sort of defined by the fact that they have a lot of immigrants. I think everybody knows that the U.S. and Canada are like immigrant countries, and in both countries, but more so in Canada, they make a big point of the fact that everybody's an immigrant. Like nobody was here originally, and except for the First Nations, except that they sort of came over from Asia in about what, 1,500 years ago. I'm an anthropologist, so I should know these things. But very, very long time ago, the First Nations came, and then the Europeans come. So everybody's an immigrant in both countries. But the way that they approach immigration is very, very different. So in the USA, they're very proud of being a melting pot. You take all of these people from all of these different cultures, and you bring them all together, and you make them into Americans. Like anybody can be an American, and all you have to do is work at it. And so, like American culture then is very it's very homogenous. It's not homogenous like Japan. Japan is like very homogenous. I mean, in Japan, it's like it's even you just say everybody's just the same, right? But in America, everybody knows how to relate to each other the same. Everybody tries to be a good American, and it's very like mixed together. Whereas in Canada, we actually it's a specific response to the American word melting pot. So you call it the mosaic. So there's like the word mosaic is kind of obscure. So it's a picture made of tiles.
Mosaic.
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 Oh, mosaic. It's a guide eyeball. Okay. So yeah, and so you have all the different tiles that are like all arranged, and each one is an individual color, and it's a single thing, but together they make a big picture, right? So that's Canada. So the idea is that you can preserve your culture in Canada. You can still be Indian or Chinese or Japanese or Québécois, and I'll get to that. Québécois is somebody from Quebec, and we'll get to that in the next slide actually. But it's very important that you can be able to remember who you are and where you come from, but at the same time be able to get along with everyone else. So that's and so because of these different attitudes, you have in the U.S. a lot of people are very resistant to immigration. People in the United States, especially in the southern United States, southeastern and southwestern, the whole South, are very worried about immigrants coming and stealing American jobs or interfering with American culture. It's not everybody. It's an issue in the United States. Some people feel one way, some people feel a different way. But it's very contentious. Whereas in Canada, everybody thinks that it's very, very easy to get into Canada. All Canadians go like, yeah, we let basically anyone in. It's not really true. Since I did immigrate to Canada, I know there's a whole system, and basically it's if you have a good education and a decent amount of money, then you can get into Canada, or if you have just a lot of money. But so it's not so easy to get into Canada, but it's easier to get into Canada than it is to get into the United States. And as a result, Canada has the second largest portion of foreign-born people in the world. Australia is the only one larger. And Canada has, I think Canada is probably more multicultural than Australia because Australia doesn't have Quebec. So
I have a question.
Sure.
So on the last slide, the Canadian people are very patriotic. On the other hand, you guys preserve each ethnic group's culture, right?
So you're talking about how everybody's working to it's their responsibility to
yes.
Like so other Canadians are responsible for. Yeah.
How can you guys be so patriotic? Because each people has their culture, right? It's hard to be Canadian.
So it's so everybody's looking out for each other, but at the same time everybody's different. Yes. And
sounds very difficult. Like if you guys homogenize, it's easy to be American or Canadian, but it's very hard to be Japanese or keeping Japanese culture or Chinese culture, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And you basically, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, is what you would say. You're exactly right. It's very hard. But this is really something that I love about Canada. This is why I even though I'm Canadian and American, even though I'm holding both nationalities, I say that I'm Canadian, and I like being Canadian better. And it's because Canada is a place where you can care about people from other cultures. You don't have to be from the same culture to be responsible for each other and to protect each other and to be in it together. Like, the only qualification for being a Canadian is to be in Canada. If you're on Canadian soil, then more or less you are a Canadian. Or at least that's what we try. That's what we try for. And sometimes it's very hard. Sometimes it's very, very hard. And ethnic tensions or language tensions or cultural differences are never easy. But I think this is, okay, yeah. It's like if in the world people are becoming closer together. People are, people like me are coming to Japan and living in a different culture. People from India immigrate to East Africa, right? Like you have an increasingly global world where people from other cultures are interacting more and more. And so I think Canada is a place that shows us the ways that you can actually make that work. The ways that you can actually make people from different cultures living together work. So yeah, and that's really what I love about Canada.
Sorry.
Of course, no, don't be sorry.
So in the United States, you can't do the same thing.
In the United States, it's different. In the United States, you're not American until you prove you're American. And both countries try. But in the United States, it's much more difficult. The United States isn't about preserving your culture, it's about how anybody can become American. But it's possible not to be American yet. And that's kind of true in Canada too, but we don't want it to be. Whereas in America, there's no push. Nobody wants to keep being multicultural. Or, I mean, everybody wants to have people from, in America, everybody wants high culture to be very varied. They like it when they can have food from everywhere, and when they can see all of the, or dances and songs and music. They like that. They like that kind of multiculturalism. But when you see actual, real cultural difference, it's awkward, and it's messy, and it's stressful, and yeah.
Do you have any opinions or questions?
I was very impressed with your presentation. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask you about why did you decide to come in Japan?
Oh, when I was 13, and right before I moved to Canada, I went on a sister city exchange to Yamanashi-ken no Enzanshi. 誰かが知ってるかな and yeah, it was really beautiful, and I was there for just like a week, but I liked it. It was the first time I'd been outside of the United States. Then shortly after that, I moved to Canada, and in my high school we had a Japanese class, 1 year. It was very, like, the Latin class was keeping it from growing because the way Ontario high school works, like, if Japanese got bigger, Latin would get smaller. It's very weird. But anyway, I took the class because I'm like, hey, Enzanshi, yokatte ne, dakara nihongo shimashou. And so I took the class, and I really loved studying Japanese language. And so when I was in university, I continued it, and it works really well with anthropology, especially the kind of anthropology I do. It's good to speak any foreign language, and if you're interested in anthropology of like technologically advanced societies, Japan is really useful because most of the like G8 countries are like European or Canadian or American, and they have basically the same culture. But Japan is very different. So yeah, I continued Japanese language, and at a certain point you have to go to the country in order to learn the language. So I'm here.
So he's not a typical otaku guy.
No, I never really watched anime or manga or like probably the people who study Japanese in Canada and the US, about half of them are like that. And the half that aren't are always sort of mildly offended for being confused. Like it's just a hatsukashi. But yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
Thank you very much for my presentation. It was very interesting. So you were talking about how important the belief, how important religion is in the US.
Yes.
And so people, what do they think about people who don't believe God, who don't have religion, and do they will be refused in that country if they don't have religion?
人によって違うでしょ。Like there are some people who who worry a lot about people who aren't Christian. I think is the best way to put it. There are some people who are very legitimately concerned, like that other people are doing something wrong with their life, and that it's going to be bad for them, like that they're not going to go to heaven, that they're going to die and go to a horrible place. There are a lot of people like that. There are also a lot of people who are more than happy to just go, I've got my way, I'm sure that it's right. You've got your way, I'm sure that you think that it's right. We'll just not talk about it so that we can be friends. And yeah, but it's more okay to sort of like, I don't want to say force your religion on people in the United States, but sometimes it's like that. It's also more okay to be not tolerant. I think, especially of Muslims, because a lot of Americans see Muslims as the enemy right now, which is really wrong, because the Muslim people that America is like at war with right now are like a really weird kind of Muslim. Like they're not like other Muslims. But just because of that, it's okay in some parts of the US to be anti-Muslim, and it's not okay to be anti-Muslim anywhere in Canada, right? Yeah. I hope that answers your question. It's very difficult for me because there's so many, they're huge countries, and everybody is so different even from each other, and so I always am afraid that I'll say something that's unfair, but yeah. Anyone else?
Are there many Canadians who has double citizenship in the US and Canada?
There are lots of people like that. I'm one of those people.
Oh.
Yeah, if you go from America to Canada, like if you start as American and become Canadian, you can keep both. If you go from Canada to America, you can't. Any American citizen, like becoming an American citizen means you have to get rid of your old citizenship. Whereas once you have American citizenship, it's very difficult to get rid of it. Like basically you have to get another government to take it away for you. You can't just, yeah. Because they see it as like trying to avoid paying your taxes. If you get rid of your citizenship, it's probably because you don't want to pay taxes. So yeah, it's really weird, and I think that difference reflects the different attitudes the countries have towards immigration. In America, you have to become American, so get rid of what was there before. But in Canada, you can keep American, and I'm not sure if you can keep other things. I don't actually know, but yeah, there are tons of dual citizens in Canada. And my best friend in high school was a triple citizen. She was born with 3 citizenships: Canada, Brazil, and Germany. Yeah, lots of multi-citizen people in Canada.
So thank you so much. Thanks for a great presentation.
Thank you for having me.